Hey there, I'm a glue stick, so I have one job. I glue kid stuff. So sorry for being jealous of Geico, who does a ton more, like give you 24/7 access to thousands of licensed agents. And Geico has been around for over 75 years and has a 97% customer satisfaction rating. While I've just got mediocre adhesive skills, Geico also has an award-winning mobile app. Uh-oh, arts and crafts time. No eating the glue stick, Miss Lydia!
Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.
Welcome to UFO Headline News with me, Heidi Hollis, where every day I aim to bring you the latest UFO reports and other fascinating stories. On Fridays at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, catch my talk show, The Outlander, where I answer your emails, take your calls, and interview some of the most intriguing guests in the world. Just go to InceptionRadioNetwork.com or IRNChat.com, where you can interact and listen live to The Outlander show. And today is Thursday, January 11th, 2018. Today is the day that the movie Alien Intrusion is being released. Everybody, you have got to go out and support this film. One day only, showing in 700 theaters nationwide. Get out there, support it. And in all honesty, it rings so true to what I've written in my book, The Secret War, in regards to these aliens not all being our friends. So check it out. Go to alienintrusion.com and you can get your tickets there, or phantomevents.com. And you can get your tickets there $14. It's for an awesome cause, and it'll open a whole lot of eyeballs out there, I believe. So go check it out. And, last Friday, January 5th, I had Gary Bates come on my show, and he was talking about his film that he helped pull together. And so check out the Outlander show, listen to the interview, and you'll get a good idea what this film is about. And it's fascinating. Going to open a lot of eyeballs out there, and I hope to get out to go see it today myself. Alrighty, starting off with some UFO reports. UFO sighting in West Palm Beach, Florida, January 5th, 2018. In brief, the witness states, I was in the cemetery, drove up and parked. Had a feeling that there was something over me like all the other times, and there it was. A round object moving really slow. Looked like a box dome when I blow it up on my phone. Got some pictures as well of triangles. In more detail, it's kind of the same thing. And, okay, it says, I knew it was not a cloud, and it was a UFO. It was round like box dome, moved slowly, and left a trail. I always know when I get this feeling to look up. I've seen things since around 13 years old till today. Chemtrails have a lot to do with some of this. I see more of these things now than ever. I believe in them, and I know what I see. I do have this feeling over me when they are around me for many years. Wow, spell check is a gift to gods. Use it, people. I want to read these, and I know you want to get your message across clearly to the world. You took the time out to report a UFO sighting, and words are bunched together. Just please. It has to be said. Has to be said. All right, here we go. At least that one had periods and some commas. Next UFO sighting. This happened in New Gloucester, Florida. I don't know if I said that right. January 5th, 2018. In brief, the witness states, I witnessed from a fourth floor balcony the described object, which traveled at an extremely high speed from north to south, then veered off south, approximately 500 to 1,000 feet above the horizon. In more detail, the witness states, while standing on the balcony of my hotel room on the fourth floor, looking east onto the ocean, I noticed quite a large, white, silver, non-flashing, solid, spherical flying object just above the horizon, approximately 500 to 1,000 feet in altitude and more than a mile away. The object's brightness and high speed is the reason I noticed it. The object was moving from north to south, from left to right, traveling extremely fast and at a constant speed and direction. Definitely within our atmosphere, it did not seem to change altitude while on its flight path. As I continued observing for the next few seconds, the object seemed to move out to sea before disappearing into a huge cloud system. The event only lasted 5 seconds at most, due to the high speed of the object. There was no sound from an engine, sound apparent at the first sighting, and none after the object disappeared. In my life, I have witnessed meteor showers and have observed high-speed aircraft and practice maneuvers. I've never seen a flying object, or any other for that matter, move at this speed whilst in the atmosphere. The experience left me feeling utterly amazed, but humbled. All right. Next UFO sighting happened in College Park, Georgia. Slight UFO blast from the past, November 20th, 2016. Dusk. Could see silhouette, boomerang-shaped flying wing. Never moved directly overhead, large white light near tips. In more detail, the witness states, driving home at dusk, this craft was hovering directly over Interstate 85 just south of the Atlanta airport. It was shaped like a boomerang, swept back flying wing look. Had 2 large white lights near the tip of each wing. I looked directly up into the light as I drove under, and it had a crystalline refractory appearance to them. It was just barely over treetop level, maybe 35 feet wide. Took place in fall of 2016, end of November. Have a friend that works at air traffic control on the southeast. Called him immediately, and he said they don't radar things that close to the ground. My opinion, black ops, not interdimensional. Okay. This next UFO sighting happened in Indian Trail, North Carolina, January 6, 2018. In brief, 5 spheres about the size of medium plane, less than 2,000 feet altitude, silently cruising from horizon to overhead, and appeared to climb as they passed us. In more detail, on Sunday, January 6, at approximately 8:30 p.m., very cold out, my wife, returning from the store, comes in excited about a couple of orange glowing balls seemingly hovering a few hundred feet above our house. My grandson and I went out to look and only saw one hovering silently overhead. It began to move slowly at first to the west-southwest. I went in to get binoculars, 10 seconds, came back out, and it was gone. About 45 seconds later, 3 more appeared from the east-northeast and came overhead as a group, but not in a tight formation. Absolutely no sound. My first thought was Chinese lanterns, but they would have been very, very large, small plane or helicopter size, and defying wind patterns. The light source was much, much brighter than a candle. With the binoculars, it appeared spherical, with a red beam coming out of the yellow-orange glow that the whole sphere was giving off. Any idea what we were watching? Yeah, it was a UFO. All right, this next UFO sighting occurred in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, January 7th, 2018. In brief, 4 orbs shrouded by mist, hovering and moving slowly over I-83. In more detail, and it's a lot of detail, which is cool, the event actually began with another strange event at 4 p.m. that day. I was heading north on I-83 at 4 p.m. and noticed what can only be described as a gash-like wound in the clouds. I make a study for a hobby of mine of clouds, and it was highly unusual. There was a steady cloud cover of cumulus clouds, but in the center, running perfectly north to south, was an exceptionally large elliptical gash in the clouds. It tapered at the points. The edges were frayed, much as a wound would be, showing disruption. The center wound portion had a clear series of lines, as if the sky had been pulled in that way by a pendulum of sorts. The closest thing I could find online about the cloud type was a fall streak cloud. I'd estimate the gash to be approximately 15 miles long. Wow. I have a compass in my car, and it practically overlapped north. I mention this because nearly exactly 2 hours later, I was going south on the same interstate, approximately 10 miles north of where I'd initially spotted said cloud. At this point, it was dark out, and I noticed 4 lights moving in formation very slowly across the interstate. I should mention we live near an airport. Air traffic is very common in this area, and I know what airplane lights look like, how they fly, etc. These lights had no flashing lights. No red markers like usual. They didn't seem to fly and so much as glide. Initially, I thought they were helicopters as they moved slowly, but their formation remained perfectly aligned as they traversed over me. I passed directly under them as I fumbled to get my phone to do video while I was driving. Yeah, that's safe. I regrettably did not capture video as I passed under them too quickly and was too startled to think. I should have pulled over. It was over very quickly and I couldn't see them again. After a few minutes after I had passed, I was looking in my rear view and noticed off to my east a standard helicopter with normal lighting hovering about 200 to 400 feet above the tree line near Reeser's summit. I assume it was observing the event. The formation these lights had was odd as well. They were moving in a pattern that I can describe as a sort of a crescent. I enclosed a badly done MS Paint illustration to show you. These lights had a color value that was unusual as well. A lighting reference I have for my hobby, which is game development. I know these lights were very low Kelvin, around 2600 to 2800, and resembled medium wattage tungsten bulbs or sodium lamps. Gosh, this person is really specific. They were surrounded by a haze or mist, and in the center I could barely make out a square-shaped blue-white light. My son also witnessed some of this. I should mention I am a highly skeptical person. I've seen hundreds of weird things that I can usually explain away by way of a rational thinking. In this case, though, I have no explanation. If they were aircraft, they were perfectly synchronized, were circular, had no normal lighting system for an aircraft, flew very slowly for aircraft, and appeared seemingly from nowhere. Their color was so low of a Kelvin, it reminded me of a candle flame, as did the way they illuminated the mist around them. These are not things I can ascribe to any aircraft, firework, or man-made object such as a drone. The first fact there were 4 moving in formation over an area that had the described gash in the sky mere hours earlier seems hardly coincidental as well. All right. The next UFO sighting this happened in Memphis, Tennessee, January 7th, 2018. In brief, very large dark UFO spotted, hidden behind clouds initially. The light from a tall building exposed it briefly as it moved northwest. Why, these UFOs hide behind clouds all the time. I guess maybe they hitch a ride or they make the cloud to hide. I don't know. Okay. The witness states in more detail. I'll start off by mentioning this occurred sometime between 6:45 and 7 p.m. January 7th, 2018, lasting for 30 to 45 seconds, and it's currently 7 a.m. the next morning, January 8th, 2018. The sighting occurred roughly 12 hours ago. The temperature was around 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and there was a mild breeze. The weather was overcast, the clouds were low, and completely filled the sky. The sky was slightly brighter than usual because of this, but not much. Due to the amount of cloud cover, the stars were not visible whatsoever. My sister and I were outside our house taking a quick smoke break. There you go. Cigarette smokers all the time. To relieve our studies, we're both college students, I noticed a green light stretching horizontally in the distance across the night sky. But this was emitting from a tall building less than 5 miles away. This building is covered in green lights, and come night time it turns on and basically becomes a gigantic green light bulb. The clouds were low, and this is a building over 30 stories high, so the light was illuminating the sky above it. The clouds were above the building, but they weren't moving more than 200 feet above it, I would presume. Our house is on a corner lot with two streets intersecting at the northeast corner, one running along the north side, one running along the east side. We were watching from the backyard, which is on the south side of the house, and we were facing west, the location of the light. We were just talking as we looked up at the green light. We kept looking at it because, honestly, we hadn't seen it before. It was a night consisting of weather cloud coverage that isn't typical in the Memphis area. After a minute or so, I saw this dark figure seemingly emerge out of nowhere above the green light. My sister doesn't have great eyesight, but mine is 20/20. I knew just from the sheer size of it that it wasn't anything man-made. So I pointed it out to my sister and asked if she saw it. Even with her subpar eyesight, she saw it immediately. It remained behind the clouds, but the light emitted from the building and into the clouds resulted in the UFO being exposed for a brief moment. The craft did not reflect any light. The craft might have come from the left side of the light or simply farther behind it, and perhaps I just couldn't see it until it was right above the green light. My perspective, though, it looked as though it just materialized out of thin air within a couple of seconds. It was an oval-shaped, disc-like shadow sticking out like a sore thumb in the sky. When I say it was oval-shaped, it was, but the outer edges of the craft were thinner and it was thicker in the middle. I'll draw a picture of it. It makes sure the shape is understood. It seemed to slightly descend when it first came into view, and then it stopped and remained stationary for a couple of seconds. Slowly thereafter it made its way across the sky, starting above and slightly to the right of the light, and proceeding to travel northeast away from it. It seemed to be traveling in a straight line, but it did appear to have an extremely minor downward tilt. If going in a straight line is considered 180 degrees, it was at 175. Wow, this is specific. It was much larger than any sort of airplane or aircraft that I'm aware of by a long shot. It didn't make any noise, at least from where we were, about 5 to 7 miles away. Across the street that runs along the north side of the house, there is an abundance of tall trees in the front yards of the properties. The craft was at an altitude low enough for me to know that as soon as it got to the tree line, we wouldn't be able to maintain visualization of it. Starting when the craft appeared, it only took about 30 to 45 seconds for it to drift out of sight. Throughout the experience, I had an enormous rush of adrenaline rushing through me. It wasn't because I was afraid, but rather a result of seeing something I had never seen before. I've always suspected the possibility of UFOs to be more likely than not, given the amount of sightings each year, but this left me without a doubt in my mind that they exist. Unfortunately, we didn't take a video, which is something I never thought I would forget in an event like this, but my sister and I were both basically in shock while watching this. When I realized it was about to be out of sight, I snapped out of it and told my sister to record it, but she didn't get it on time. She got a photograph of the sky that shows the low-hanging clouds and the green light, but the UFO in reference was behind the trees before she got the picture off. There is an odd-looking gray mass in the photo, but I'm not sure what it was. We didn't notice it until we looked at the photo. Using the photo as a reference, though, I can say very confidently that what we saw was many shades darker. All right. The next UFO sighting. This happened in Melbourne, Victoria, where I used to live. I love that place. January 8th, 2018. Flashing, circling red lights, moving fast from my left to right, changed direction very swiftly and drifted back and forth before I lost it. In more detail, I was stargazing as the night sky was very clear. I was trying to notice satellites or planets and research their morphology and location and how to spot them. I then suddenly thought something was moving, and then chucked it to be something like a blinking star. But soon I found it move in a certain trajectory that involved an artificially accelerated pace. It was hard to track it for too long, and it was shocking to see it change direction and hover up and down as it quit moving from my left to right. That's when I realized what I was seeing. It was a bunch of red lights in a disc shape with a certain self-rotation and movement that involved displacement. I lost sight of the object after a car headed past in front of me as the lights were too bright, and it was hard to find the object again. Darn it all to heck. All right, this next UFO sighting. Oh, great. This is going to be a fun name to pronounce. Uh, UFO sighting in Nagpur, Maharashtra. That happened January 6, 2018. Glowing red object disappearing and reappearing at random points in the sky. Flash green light before finally disappearing. In more detail, on January 6, 2018, about 6:50 p.m., I was working on my laptop when all of a sudden there was a blackout due to power cut in our locality. I have a rooftop apartment. I got up from my desk and moved out onto the rooftop to look around at the extent of the power cut. It seemed that the power was out for only a few blocks around my building. There was a multi-storied building opposite to my vantage point. An unusual glowing red light attracted my attention over the terrace of the building. It appeared like warning lights for planes like the ones they have on tall towers. It did not make sense on such low altitude. I kept looking. The light slowly started to ascend vertically up. It was quite dark, and so I could only see the movement of the light. I thought somebody might be testing their drone cameras or something. Didn't pay too much heed. After rising a meter or so, the light just went off, disappeared. Since it looked unusual somehow, I took out my cell phone, Motorola Moto E2, and pointed its camera towards the sky. A few seconds later, it showed up in the sky at the same altitude, but between my vantage point and the building where it appeared. It came quite close to my vantage point, hovered there for 2 to 3 seconds, then disappeared momentarily and reappeared again just above the same spot where it disappeared. I thought to myself that a drone doesn't fly this quick. It went off again, then reappeared at a spot perpendicular and what appears to be 50 to 60 meters apart from the last location. Hovered there for a while, then disappeared again. I got it on my cell phone and kept pointing it towards the sky and waited for it to reappear. A few seconds later, it reappeared again, above the building where I spotted it, first hovered there for a few seconds and then flashed a green light. After that, it immediately descended and disappeared. I kept recording, hoping it would show up again, but it didn't. A minute or two later, the power came back on. I did come out later in the night to check whether I could spot it again, but to no avail. Aw. Okay. Well, that was fascinating. And we have a paranormal point to join us for this evening. This one is called Nightmare Deaths, a spooky tale of a sort. Of all the ghost stories, the author writes, and horror movies, Nightmare on Elm Street is the one I thought would be the least likely to be based on reality. However, the inspiration for the Wes Craven movies came from a real-life story, published in the Los Angeles Times in 1987. Since April 1983, at least 130 Southeast Asian refugees have left this world in essentially the same way, the article stated. They cried out in their sleep, and then they died. While this seems totally unrealistic in some cultures, there is actually a name for this. In the Philippines, it's called Bangagut. In Japan, Pakuri. In Thailand, something else. Dr. Robert Kirshner told the Times, but it all roughly translates as the same thing. Nightmare death. The deaths all came from the same community. The victims were all people who allegedly had no symptoms of ill health, and they all died while having nightmares. Autopsies revealed that some of the victims of nightmare deaths died by sudden heart stoppage, and the coroner also found something else strange. All of the 18 hearts I examined were slightly enlarged, and 17 showed defects in their conduction systems. the array of fibers that carries electronic impulses from the brain to the heart, the Times reported. The fibers were frayed and curled as if, Kirshner says, their hearts just shorted out. Because all of the victims examined by this coroner had the same genetic defect, one theory is that the defect in tandem with the nightmares caused their hearts to stop. If you're scared this could happen to you now that you know that Nightmare on Elm Street is based on a true story, the Times reported that nightmare deaths are only found in certain Asian populations, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, as well as the Philippines and Japan. I must add to this conundrum, I named the shadow people and I named the Hat Man phenomenon. They both like to come to you in your nightmares, especially the Hat Man, who looks very much like Freddy Krueger from Nightmare on Elm Street. He has a flat gaucho hat. He wears a three-piece suit, a trench coat, white shirt sometimes seen, sometimes a watch on his hip. Sometimes he wears a top hat, other times a cape. Sometimes he smiles wide. Sometimes he changes his hat. Sometimes he sits on your bed. Other times he stares at you from across the room. Or you see him in broad daylight. Or he's knocking on your door. Or he's just in your nightmares talking to you. Or in person. This guy I call the Hat Man. In the beginning I call him the Hat Man Shadow. And I just now call him the Hat Man because he is essentially causing havoc around the globe. I have a book written on him called The Hat Man, and the first book written on him and shadow people is called The Secret War, based on true alien war and shadow people. So, check it out. Go to HeidiHollis.com and you can learn more about that. A lot of people are, best way to put it, ripping off my information on these things and making, movies and documentaries and TV shows. And yeah, it's been very interesting. Call me, people, if you want the real story instead of ripped off information. I said it. It needed to be said. Okay, it's just getting old. All right. I want to thank you all for listening to UFO Headline News with me, Heidi Hollis. Be sure to check out UFOHeadlineNews.com every single day. And also tune into my other weekly show, The Outlander, Fridays, 8 p.m. Central. And you know what? If you've experienced something out of the ordinary, want some level-headed advice, or if you've seen a UFO and want to share, go to my main website, HeidiHollis.com, or write me through dusoutlander@gmail.com. Remember always to keep an open mind so you can stay informed and inspired.
The Starlight Lounge presents An Evening with the Progressive Box.
Oh, what a great audience. Let's dim the lights for this next one. Nope, too much. There it is. Gotta get things just right. Like Progressive's Name Your Price tool. Tell us what you want to pay, and we help you find coverage options that fit your budget. And now, the mood is right. Wait, the lights are back on again. Trudy, can you? And now it's completely dark.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.